Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm senior editor Denton Davidson here with Davina, Pardo, and Leah Wolchok, directors of Judy Blume Forever, a look at the famous author's life, impact on pop culture, and the occasional controversies over her frankness about puberty and sex. Judy Blume, she's one of these iconic authors. She's in a rare league of writers who are also celebrities in their own right. And she's known for her frank talk about sex. And the film kicks right off with her talking about masturbation. Why not? So why did you open with that scene and start there?
Well, we were looking for, we realized at some point, we tried different things. We at one point tried opening with letters that children had sent to Judy because we knew the letters were an important part of the film, but that wasn't quite working. We knew we needed to start with Judy's work. We needed to set the tone. We needed to give people who weren't familiar with her work, which is, a smaller percentage of the audience, but still wanted to give people a sense of what her work was about. And we wanted to give a sense of her personality. And we felt like that moment captured so much about what the work was, her honesty, how she was radical, unafraid, and also just the way she sort of played to camera and jokes around. Felt like was the perfect way to open.
I think we also wanted her to say masturbation right when the film started, because we wanted people to sort of assess what was happening, what an audience member might be happening within their own bodies when they hear that word. Is it making me uncomfortable? And why is it making me uncomfortable? And why is that woman on screen not uncomfortable while she's saying it? And so it was like from the start, we know here's someone who's going to tell it like it is, and she's not afraid to say anything. And I'm going to relax and listen to her tell her story.
And I was familiar with some of her books, and she's got so much energy and this great personality that people love, but I really didn't know much about her life at all. Why did she decide that she would allow you in this way? And how did you get connected with her to get access to her story?
Well, it took a couple of years for her to decide she was ready. I first reached out just by sending an email. I know so many kids wrote to her when they were little, but I never did. I've been a huge Judy Blume reader, and then sort of came back to it as an adult and realized I wanted to make this film. So I sent an email to her. And a few weeks later, I was actually in the children's section of a bookstore with my kids and looked at my phone, and there was that first reply, which basically said, no, I don't think so, but maybe. And so we kind of went back and forth for a couple of years. I started building a team. Finally got to meet Judy for the first time, and finally in February 2020 she decided she was ready. So what happens next?
Leah, you were brought on board. I understand that you'd never even read her books. Is that correct?
I mean, I read Freckle Juice.
Okay.
But I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, a place that is now ground zero for the, resurgence of book banning. And it was then. I mean, Judy's books were seen as taboo. They were seen as inappropriate, just like girls' bodies were seen as taboo and strangely inappropriate to even talk about puberty. Same conversations that are happening right now in Florida. So I wasn't the fangirl. I didn't have this deep childhood connection. I feel like there's this club that I'm not a part of all these women of my generation who read Judy's work as kids and felt so deeply connected to her and felt like she understood them in a way and opened them up to different experiences. So I didn't have that. And I was really grateful. Davina still asked me to direct the film with her. I think it helps that I had a different perspective, that I was looking at her work as an adult and as a mom myself and introducing my own kids in 2020, 2021 to her work for the first time. So I was sort of in part making the film for the kid I wish I had been, had I been able to read her books.
While you were filming, we weren't, I mean, it had begun, but it's not like it is now. I mean, did you have any idea how relevant it could have become? We are at the point where people are banning books just for talking about race or sexuality. Some people don't want people to know basic American history in their libraries. Did that surprise you how relevant this story has now become?
We knew that Judy's experience being censored was going to be sort of this historical chapter of the film. And we were following what was happening in book banning. We knew books were still being banned, and we knew that most of the authors being targeted were Black and brown authors and queer authors. So we knew that we wanted to interview people who write for kids today whose books are being challenged, but we had no idea how things would explode over the course of making the film. It went to a place that we couldn't have predicted.
And Leah, how did you decide who you wanted to interview for this film? Because we see people she wrote letters to, we see celebrities, Molly Ringwald's in there, which I think is the perfect celebrity of an 80s film star to be in this documentary. How did you decide on who you wanted to interview?
Well, first we thought of everyone that we wanted to interview as a reader. So we wanted to sort of democratize the playing field in a way by considering that they all sat in front of a book, words on a page, and had that intimate experience with Judy as an author. But we wanted to interview, like Davina said, authors who are writing for young audiences whose work is being censored today. We wanted to interview creators of TV shows and movies that are sort of pushing the boundaries of sex positivity and body positivity on screen. So Anna Konkle, Pen 15, Lena Dunham from Girls, and yeah, Molly Ringwald. It's something that was in her interview that we wish we could have put in the film, just that connection that she has with women who saw themselves in her when, she was a teen icon of the 80s, just in the same way that women who approach Judy now saw themselves in her books when they were kids reading her books. But we also always knew that we had to include women who had written to Judy as kids and who have continued that relationship with Judy for decades. It was something that felt extraordinary that Judy has had this deep connection to some of the fans that reached out to her, not just sending her fan mail, but pouring their hearts out to her, reaching out to her in really vulnerable moments in their lives and leaning on her in a way that they didn't feel like they could lean on any other adult in their lives. So we were so lucky that Judy introduced us to two women who started writing to her when they were kids and have continued that relationship with her.
Yeah, that was one of the most fascinating moments for me, was to see that she had responded to some of these thousands of letters and then maintained a correspondence. She even attended one of their graduations when their parents couldn't attend. I mean, that's shocking. What's another thing that surprised me about Judy is that she said she had total recall from basically her entire life since third grade. I barely remember last week. That's what fascinated you, Davina, the most about Judy, and what did you learn about her that you didn't expect?
And that total recall is incredible. I remember when we went to her childhood home in New Jersey, we went into her bedroom and she looked out the window and pointed at each house down the block and said the first and last name of every person who lived in those houses when she was growing up. It's amazing. I didn't know much about her life at all going into this, which is part of why I wanted to make the film. And one of the things that surprised me was that although I knew her work was so radical, I didn't know how radical she was. I mean, I guess that seemed, of course, the person who created that work would be radical, but I didn't realize to the extent to which it came out over the course of her life and her personal life, that she was constantly pushing back against societal expectations in her marriage, in finding her voice as a writer, in writing books that were considered taboo, in leaving a second marriage and, disappointing her mother, and then in fighting the censors. And, that scene with Pat Buchanan, going head to head with Pat Buchanan in this really quiet, calm, but brilliant way, just finding the perfect way to fight back.
Yeah, I love that scene with Pat Buchanan where she asks him, why is he so wrapped up about masturbation? and she says in the film that, she didn't feel brave. She felt brave in her writing, but she didn't feel brave to be a spokesperson. But she really, it didn't really seem that way. I mean, she was out on television doing things that I think many people would not have had the bravery to do. Davina and Leah, best of luck to you at the Emmys. Judy Blume Forever. It's currently streaming on Amazon Prime Video. And I want to thank you both for joining Gold Derby today.
Thanks for having us.